And it's great to see the diversity. I can see that we've got people from Australian Marriage Equality here, we've got people from PFLAG, we've got people from the Greens, we've got people from the Sex Party, we've got people from Amnesty International I know are here. Anybody else you can shout out as well if I've missed you. So it's great to see the diversity that we have here. And we're here because we know that the game's changed. The dominoes are starting to fall. And internationally, we know that there's a number of states and political parties of various persuasions, from the Scottish National Party to the Socialist Republic of Vietnam, looking at marriage equality and arguing for marriage equality. And nationally, in our own country, we've seen a number of state parties passing support for marriage equality. And when I sat in Parliament a couple of months ago, or less than that, when they debated the motion to support marriage equality, you could hear support from all sides of Parliament. We had people from the Labor Party saying that, Penny Sharp for instance, I believe that every person who calls Australia home has the right to be treated equally before the law. We had Catherine Cusack, who is a Liberal, saying that denying gay people the right to marriage caused enormous harm and hurt and was a 19th century approach to relationships. We saw Kate Fairman from the Greens saying it's clear that the institution of marriage will be strengthened by accepting diversity within the community, removing discrimination and allowing access to people who want it. And we had Trevor Khan, a National, saying it's clear that, well, no, that's Kate, we'll go back to Trevor. Trevor said it's time for all of us to soften our hearts and accept that the expression of love and commitment through marriage should be available to all couples, irrespective of sexuality. And this change is occurring nationally because people like AME and CAR and PFLAG and Equal Loves across the country amongst the political parties have been working tirelessly on this issue. But we're only facilitators. It's because of the work that you people have been doing, because you've been getting up and you've been writing to your parliamentarians, you've been coming to rallies, you've been typing out submissions to Senate inquiries, and the political parties and the parliaments are listening. But now's not the time to sit back and rest on our laurels. There's a change afoot. But now's the time to redouble your efforts. Now's the time to email parliamentarians, you know, speak to your family and friends to do the same thing. Come to rallies, write to newspapers, get the word out there. It's not the time to sit back, now's the time to take action. So thank you for all coming along, and hopefully soon we'll be celebrating equality, but not until we double our efforts. Today we've got a number of people here representing the diverse number of people that are involved in the campaign. So I'd just like to introduce our first speaker, Chris Lawrence, who's the co-chair of the City of Indigenous Advisory... I'll start that again. Chris Lawrence, the co-chair, City of Sydney Indigenous Advisory Panel, and he's going to do an acknowledgement of the country and also have a bit of a speak to you about why marriage equality is important to him.
So thank you. My husband. So I'm here. On behalf of the City of Sydney, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Advisory Panel, which I co-chair with other people, on behalf of the Aboriginal Metropolitan Land Council of New South Wales, I've been asked to welcome you to Gadigal land of the Eora Nations. I pay my respects to our past and present elders. And Gadigal people have shared this country, and they've done it with generosity and tolerance. And people who live here should also show the same tolerance. In our shared Australian history, Aboriginal people were also denied the right to marry without permission, and we now look back on this as an example of the worst kind of discrimination. Marriage equality is an issue for the Aboriginal community as it affects our families, our partners and our communities. Discrimination that stops a person marrying who they love is a gross violation of human rights and dignity, and there should not be any place for it in our communities. I'm a proud Aboriginal gay man. I believe human rights is for all humans, and if anyone wants to marry me, I'll be around after the rally. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, you know, as we are here fighting for our own rights today, this is and always was Aboriginal land. It's never been ceded. So thank you, Chris, for coming and speaking to us for today. So I just had a couple of pieces of housekeeping before I introduce the next speaker. And that is, for anyone who doesn't know, to let you know that this is actually a national day of protest for equal marriage rights. It's not just us here in Sydney, but the whole of Australia who will be marching around major cities today fighting for equal rights. So we're joined today by Melbourne, Adelaide, Perth, Brisbane, Canberra, Hobart and Newcastle, all marching today for equal rights. The support for marriage equality is so broad, spreads across the country and across all kinds of backgrounds of people in Australia. We really just need to get those in Parliament to catch up with everyone else. And just before I forget, I want to do this at the start of the day so that I don't forget. I want to make sure that everyone knows that there are donation buckets going around. This is something that's really important to be able to organise these protests, to keep getting the word out about the campaign and to be able to continue the struggle as hard and as enthusiastically as we can. So can I get people to point out where the donation buckets are? If anyone has got a donation bucket, please hold it up. Apparently there's one around here. Yep, excellent, okay. Well, if there's more donation buckets around, please wave them around, and I'm going to have one here by the stage as well. So please give generously today. We need to be able to keep doing what we do. And I thank everybody who has been involved in the campaign, has continued coming back over the years, and those who are getting involved for the first time today. Thank you. And I also want to give a very big thank you to Linda today, who is signing for us and making this rally as diverse and inclusive as possible. So thank you.
Thank you so much for coming out today, and thank you to all those people who have continued to come to these rallies for the past 8 years. Hands up if today is your first rally ever. That's great. Hands up if you've been to more than 5 rallies. Awesome. So I think the clear message to Canberra is we're not giving up. We're going to continue to be strong and continue to be heard. The August rallies for marriage equality are particularly important. The August rallies this year marks 8 years since the Howard government passed a ban on same-sex marriage. But what has happened since that passed? Support for the reform has just continued to grow and grow and grow, and is now at its highest level ever. So what we all need to know is that we have the majority of Australians on our side. They believe that all Australians should be treated equally by the law. Now, who has a placard here today? Make sure you hold them up high and proud, and make sure you continue to be heard. Now, it's also really important that we realise a vote is coming. In the coming weeks or the coming months, the lower house or the Senate will likely vote on marriage equality. Now, it's going to be a tough vote, but what's going to make it a lot easier is if you all be heard, if you all contact your MPs. Now, I know a lot of you might live in the city area. You know that our local members, whether it's Clover Moore or Tanya Plibersek or Anthony Albanese, are supporters, but we all have senators and senators vote as well. So you really need to make sure you contact them and tell them that this is really important for you. Don't forget to hold the placards up high. I saw you drop them down. Come on, lift them up again, guys. Thank you. Yeah. It is really important that you continue to be heard. You know, the key thing with marriage is you don't get married unless there's engagement. And now is the time for that engagement. We've seen that in Tasmania, their state government is moving forward with marriage equality laws. A huge round of applause in Tasmania. And particularly for their Premier, Lara Giddings, who was the first Premier, the first political leader of a government to declare support for marriage equality and to say she's going to get it done. That's a huge thing. So a huge round of applause for Lara as well. And I guess the message that Tasmania sends is that if the federal government fails the aspirations of our nation, we will get this done state by state and territory by territory. This is a reform that is not going away. It's only going to get louder. So remember, everyone, a vote is coming. This is your chance to be heard, and please be heard in the coming days. We have more public and more parliamentary support than ever before, and it's because of people like you being heard and coming out and staying strong. I'd also really like to thank CAR, Community Action Against Homophobia, for putting these rallies on, and they have done it for 8 years. I know Rachel Evans is here, and she's been out doing these rallies for a very long time, as have people like Breen and Kat Rose and Ben Cooper. So, the people with the donation buckets, raise those. Please make sure you donate to CAR and help them put these rallies on, because they do a fantastic job. So everyone, I just want to thank you for putting this reform on the national landscape, for continuing to be heard. We will win, and we need to keep on fighting. Thank you so much.
Everybody, somebody once said to me not long ago, history is made by those who show up. Congratulate yourselves for showing up on a bad day. Give yourselves a round of applause. I want to share a little bit of history with you. In 1994, I actually arrived in Australia. In 1995, it became apparent to me in Sydney as a gay man that we were talking about gay marriage. At that point in time, it became apparent to me then that it was still illegal to be gay in Tasmania. And I kind of thought, how could you be talking about gay marriage in one state, yet in the same country, in another state, you actually couldn't even be gay, technically. So I kind of thought, do you know what? As at that time I was a chef, I'm not going to buy any Tasmanian food products. And I'm going to boycott buying Tasmanian food. We put out a little press release. Some people in the audience would remember this. Most of you, I can see, would not. You might not have even been born. We put out a little press release, and bear in mind this was pre-Twitter, pre-Facebook, pre-mobile phone almost. And we got 10,000 signatures on a petition. We went door knocking, and we had 400 restaurants across Sydney and Melbourne join a boycotting Tasmanian food products and drinks. Before long, and it was so that the voice of the gay community in Sydney and Melbourne could be heard, sending a message to our friends and comrades down in Tasmania to force change and to put that on the national agenda, along with the Tasmanian Gay and Lesbian Rights Lobby Group led by Rodney Croom. What eventuated from that was then, we very quickly got a phone call from Paul Keating's people. They flew us down. At the time, Duncan Kerr, who was the Federal Attorney General, whose seat just happened to be Hobart, had a vested interest in getting this done. Let's end the boycotts, because it was starting to bite. And, you know, back then, they flew me down. I had to have police escorts because there was death threats. We actually went to do a conference, and they couldn't do the conference because there were so many people out the front who literally wanted to tear me apart. And now the irony is not lost on me that I'm standing here, the chair of Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras, with also going to be speaking today is one of the people that helped support that campaign, who is the independent member for the seat of Sydney Clover Moore, who gave great support at that time, and Mardi Gras came out in support of that campaign. The irony is not lost on me that I'm now the chair of Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras. I'm on the steps of Sydney Town Hall, and I'm saying to you, go and buy Tasmanian food products and send a message to the rest of the country, and send a message to the Premier of Tasmania, good on you, girl. If the leaders of this country do not stand up for social reform, who will? It does not matter if you are state or federal. You are the leaders of this country. Our expectation is that when we vote you in, you move forward with progressive change. You do not act at the whims of other little political fractions within your party. It's time for change, and change comes from the grassroots. It comes from people like you pushing your state members, pushing your federal members, and that change has to happen now. Email them, Facebook them, Twitter them, do whatever it is that you have to do. march up Oxford Street, not just in March. March up Oxford Street every time that you can at events like this. Thank you. Message sends me a text. Hi, doll. Go Tasmania! Well, I know where I'm going to take my next holiday. I'm taking my map of Tassie and heading down Tassie. Keep fighting and keep winning. Love, Magda. Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Sim from Melbourne. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge that we're on stolen land. I'm involved with Y-Gender, an organisation for sex and gender diverse young people. We organise support, programs and projects mostly for transgender and gender diverse young people. It's youth-led. Me and my friends and all of our community know that there are still many more rights for the GLBTIQ community that we need to win. We need to continue fighting for this. We need more allies, and marriage equality is just the tip of the iceberg. As a queer young person, I had to move high school twice due to homophobia. Every corner I turned, someone would be calling me names and picked on me. And I know that if we had marriage equality, that would correct a lot of societal attitudes and make school a safer place. I'm a healthy person, and as an individual, I'm very healthy. But I feel a deep sadness most days that really hurts. Sometimes I cry at night about it, because I'm a busy organiser for trans youth in Melbourne. And despite all I do, despite all my commitment and everything that I do, it's just not enough. We're a minority within an oppressed minority within an oppressed minority. I have many examples and stories that prove the fact that we need more allies. And we need to connect more as a community nationally and internationally.
On the podium to speak here is the Lord Mayor of the City of Sydney, Clever Moore.
Hello everyone. Welcome to Town Hall this afternoon. For this really important rally. I would like to acknowledge the original custodians of our land, the Gadigal people, the Eora Nation, pay my respects to their elders past and present, acknowledge the people of 200 nationalities who live in our city, and particularly acknowledge all of you today here. Welcome. It's 8 months since I spoke at your marriage equality rally last. And in those 8 months, 3 marriage equality bills are now before the Federal Parliament. 2 parliamentary inquiries have revealed the support for recognising same-sex marriage. 250,000 people took part in the House of Representatives online survey, with 64% supporting legislation of same-sex marriage. Wait, there's more. The Senate inquiry got 59% support for a marriage equality bill and recommended in favour of same-sex marriage. The New South Wales Legislative Council supported marriage equality, and last weekend the Tasmanian Premier announced she would introduce a marriage equality bill. And recent opinion polls show support for marriage equality is over 60% and rising. Now you can cheer. It took 3 attempts in Parliament to legalise consensual homosexual sex and another 19 years to achieve equal age of consent. The lesson is, don't give up. If Tony Abbott causes marriage equality to fail this time, New South Wales must follow Tasmania's lead, but only as an interim measure, because marriage equality law must be a national law. Social change is hard, but social change does happen. With marriage equality, history is on our side. So, all strength to you.
I'd like to thank everyone for turning out today. It's a pretty miserable old day, and to be able to turn out in such great numbers basically represents the passion that people feel for this very important issue. I'd like to thank the organisers of the rally and the previous speakers. I'd like to recognise that this struggle has gone on for 8 long years, and it's not an anniversary that I'd like to be celebrating. I'd like to be going to an anniversary party tonight for my gay and lesbian friends who'd be celebrating their 8th wedding anniversary. I'd like to also recognise those in this community who have continued to fight for for rights in the LGBTI community, not just for 8 years but for decades. And those people have achieved extraordinary victories for our society, and we should recognise those people who have given up so much in order to equalise rights in our society. This is a union issue. It will be continued to fight for and fought for by unionists and by trade unions such as the MUA until we achieve this inevitable victory. It's nearly 40 years. 40 years next year will be the anniversary when the BLF, the Builders Labourers Federation, the BLF introduced pink bands in the Victorian University in order to basically protest against the gay activist who was shot out of the university. So we have seen what the trade union movement has been able to achieve when we involve ourselves in this incredibly important struggle. We are behind 11 countries. We should be ashamed of ourselves as Australians, the fact that we are not in the first 11 countries to introduce equal rights around equal marriage. How is it that a country like ours, that was one of the first in the world to introduce the right to vote for women, it will be one of the last potentially to introduce equal marriage rights? As inevitable as the victory around women having the right to vote was, so will the right to marry those we choose to love. The MUA will forever stand with people who fight for justice and against inequality. We are sick to death of this institutionalised discrimination that continues to have negative consequences in our community. How can we allow young people to be in their bedrooms committing suicide or self-harming because they don't have equal rights? It is a disgrace that anyone should feel in a position where their only way out of a crisis is to kill themselves. These laws need to be changed, they will be changed, and we'll continue to fight until they are. This is MUA national policy. It's not just a policy that we're trying to enact in our industrial agreements, it's also our national policy to fight for marriage equality. We will continue to fight against homophobia and hypocrisy. We have seen Tony Abbott running around the joint talking about individual rights, yet denying individuals the right to marry. His hypocrisy is sickening, but it's wholly unsurprising. He's, the call for a conscience vote amongst the Liberal Party, I find quite ironic. How do you give a conscience vote to people without one? They've continued to demonstrate that they have no social...
Marriage is a civil right.
Gay, straight, black, white.
Marriage is a civil right.
Gay, straight, black, white.
Marriage is a civil right.
What do we want? Equal marriage. When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Equal marriage.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Equal marriage.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Equal marriage.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Equal marriage.
When do we want it?
Now.
How are we going to get it?
What?